Bonjour tout le monde, Marc-André Piette again, back for week 2 for our golf and fitness program that we're going to have. So hopefully you guys were able to follow along the exercises that Derek gave you last week. Hopefully you feel a little bit stronger, a little bit better for week 2. So again, just to follow up for last week, we've talked about the C posture. So again, the common flaw that people have is to bend over from the upper back. So that's probably the most common posture flaw. Another flaw that we see sometimes when we're teaching golf is people that do the opposite. So that's what we call the S posture. So perhaps sometimes you've been told or taught to push your hips back or push your bum backwards, and then that creates a very big arc in your lower back here, and that's what we call the S posture. So what's going to happen when you have an S posture in the golf swing? Really, you're deactivating the influence or the action of your hips in the golf swing. So if you have the lower body too far back into your posture, it's going to be very, very difficult to rotate your hips properly into the golf swing. So for people that has a natural lower back that is bent backwards this way or into the S posture, what we're going to try to do is move the hips forward a little bit while staying into a very active position to make sure that we can activate again all the proper muscles in our body. So that's it for week 2, S posture. Again, Derek's going to follow up with you and give you some great exercise for you to work on it at home.
Welcome back, CAF members. Derek, FSI at Carling here for week 2 of your mobility and corrective exercises for the golf fitness program. This week, as Marc-André talked about, we are talking about S posture. Okay, so S posture in the swing just means an excessive curvature in the low back. So if I pull my shirt a little bit tighter here, it's an excessive curvature in the low back, which will impact the amount that you can actually rotate the hips in the swing. We don't want to have that excessive curvature in the low back. Usually, when we set up, we want the neutral posture, like Marc-André said. To alleviate that excessive curvature in the low back, what we want to do is we want to work on stretching out what's tight. So with S posture, what we usually tend to have is what it's called lower cross syndrome. So lower cross syndrome, if I drew an X on my hips, the bottom of the X on this side, the hip flexors and the quads would be tight, low back, so upper quadrant would be tight as well, weak glutes, and weak abdominals. So this line here would be weak, this line here would be tight. So what we're going to do for you today, we're going to start with day 1 is going to be mobility. So we're going to open up the hip flexors and the lower back, and then when it comes to correctives on day 2, we're going to strengthen glutes and abs. So the first stretch I want you guys to work on is going to be called the couch stretch. So I'm going to use a bench here, but you can use a couch or a wall at home, and this is going to be more of a static position for your stretch. A lot of people bail out in this stretch, and what I mean by bail out in this stretch is that the heel will come close to the butt and they'll stay in hip flexion. What I want you to think about is driving the hips forward and keeping the belly tight. Okay, driving the hips forward, keeping the belly tight. Make sure that you feel a stretch through the quad all the way into the hip flexor on this side. You're going to do what you do on one side, you're obviously going to do on the other side, but make sure you're not arching your back or sitting back on your heel. The second one is a half straddle side-lying position. So you're going to be in this position here with the toe tucked back in behind you, legs straight. You're going to lie down on the opposite elbow, and we're going to go for a reach. So you're going to reach your bicep beside your ear. What we're looking for is a stretch down the bent leg. So you're not going to feel anything on the straight leg. You're going to tuck that toe underneath you. Make sure the hip is pushing up towards the ceiling as you reach overhead with your arm. And again, you're just going to hold for the given amount of time that I prescribe at the end. And then you're going to go ahead and switch sides and do the same thing on the other side. The third one is very similar as well. It's called a half I'm side lying half runner stretch. So you're gonna grab your foot, 2 knees together, lying on your elbow. You're gonna pull your heel back towards your glute, and you're gonna push both hips towards, I would say, the camera in this case. So just driving forward with the hips, getting a nice stretch. This one's gonna be more quad. The last one, number 2, is gonna have a little bit more hip engagement. Number 4, we have the Samson stretch. So the Samson stretch is just a deep lunge, 1 foot forward, 1 knee back as far as you can. Again, keeping the midline engaged. So I'm squeezing my belly, I'm avoiding arching my back. But what I'm gonna do from here is I'm gonna interlace my fingers and reach up over my head. If I want extra stretch, I'm gonna start leaning towards the side of the leg that's in front, and that should give me a nice stretch down the back leg, okay? So interlace the fingers, reach, lean, and again, always thinking about driving the hips forward without compensating by arching through the upper back. Number 5, we have the cat-cow, okay? So the cat-cow is one where we go from an arched position and then we tilt the pelvis posteriorly by squeezing the butt and driving the hips forward. And then we're going back into an anterior tilt of the pelvis, which is gonna bring your back into S posture. So what I want you to do for the cat-cow, because you're somebody who tends to be more in S posture, do not overarch the back. Go from neutral to rounded through the low back, back to neutral. So don't overarch here. Think more about over rounding that low back as you go into cow versus cat, whichever one you want to call, but one goes from an arch position to a rounding position. And this is all controlled at the level of the hips by the glutes. So you're gonna squeeze your glutes, tilt your pelvis underneath you. And the last one is gonna be a 90-90 static reach. So 90-90 just means you're at 90 degrees at the front knee, 90 degrees at the back knee. One hand is gonna support you. You're gonna reach forward, trying to keep the chest upright. You're gonna go as far as you can. You're gonna hold as you exhale, and then you're gonna come back. So it's a reach, inhale, exhale, and hold. What I want you to try and avoid with this one is just completely rounding the upper back as you go down. You won't get as much of a stretch in the low back than you will if you keep your chest tall as you continue reaching. Okay, so those are 6 exercises that will help on the mobility for your quads, your hip flexors, and your low back with regards to fixing S posture in your swing.